Top. Good boy. Hi, my name is Candace Bernhardt Johnson, and this video is being filmed for the purposes of my craniosacral therapy case study. This is case study number 1, and this is one of my personal horses. His name is Sunday Topper. Topper is a 23-year-old stock grade. We believe that he's paint, but beyond that, I don't know. He is stock type, and he's quite the sweetheart. I have known him since he may have been 12 or 13. He came from, as far back as we know, he came from a kill buyer auction. A man had pulled him out of the auction because he thought he was too pretty to go out like that, and I'm so glad he did. And then after that, he lived feral, semi-feral, just on his property for about 5 years. He wasn't really handled, really didn't have a whole lot of one-on-one with people. When I met him, he was pulled from this man's farm by a instructor friend of mine, and her intention was for him to be a 4-H horse, and unfortunately he was not safe for children in any stretch of the imagination. And a lot of that was he at some point in the past had to have been very mistreated and abused. He was absolutely terrified of saddles, and just wanted absolutely nothing to do with people. If he was loose, you wouldn't be able to get within 50 feet of him without him taking off the other direction. So in that time, I've spent a lot of time restarting him and working with him and helping him try to become more confident around humans and more trusting, and he's definitely become one of the barn favorites. We do not ride him. And you'll see that in the evaluation portion here. He has a lot of damage from poor saddle fit, physically, and then also mentally and emotionally. He suffered a lot of trauma from just the worst of what people have to offer. So it's part of the reason why I felt that CST would be very helpful for him. For the most part, he is very trusting of people he knows, but he is still very quick to assume the worst with any kind of touch, and especially from people he does not know. So being that CST is largely for the benefit of the horse mentally and emotionally as well as physically, I felt that would be very helpful for him. So we're going to go ahead and get into the evaluation portion here and see what we can do. We're going to do gait assessment first. Okay, so I'm going to evaluate him at liberty just because it's easier for me to follow him and evaluate him holding the camera this way. So right off the bat, he decided he wanted to trot. Now, Topper is a naturally fearful and skeptical horse, and so he needs a lot of help and a lot of guidance. Good boy. So he'll probably look, come on, bud. He'll probably look a little frantic until he settles in. Come on, bud. Come on. Come on, buddy. Come on, Top. Okay, so right off the bat, his trot doesn't look bad, but it is very short. And being that he's stock horse, that doesn't really bother me so much. Let's see if I can get him to, sorry, let me change hands here. See if we can get him to step off in a walk. Or give me a trot instead. So First thing I'm noting is that he's carrying his head very high for him. He's kind of tight, especially in brachiocephalic muscle. I'm noticing there's a lot of tightness there. There's a bit of tightness through his back. And while he is striding out nicely, he's not tracking up. It's a very short trot. However, it's not a Western jog. So he does have quite a bit of spring and elevation to his trot, but he is actually hollowing out, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of hard to see that because he does actually have a pretty healthy back, but he is hollowing. And one of the things that we kind of deal with Top is he has always had a difficult time maintaining healthy muscle tone through his haunches. And so one of the things that I can see from here is the atrophy through his glutes. And I can see that when I ask him to trot, his head bobs up and he sort of pulls himself along as opposed to rounding and driving from behind. Come on, buddy. Come on, Top. If I can get him to... He's not really interested in walking, which is interesting because he's not the most forward horse on an everyday basis. I want to see him walk, though. Good boy. His walk is pretty good. But I'm not liking the fact that he's not really engaging his back. Excuse me. And he's not really lifting up with his abdomen, although he did a little bit there in that trot. It doesn't look too bad. It's just not as a fit as I'd like to see it. So let's see. I might be able to get him to canter. Come on. Canter. Canter. Top or canter. Come on, buddy. Come on. So really the only thing that I'm noticing is that as he's traveling, his head's very high and he's not round. But as far as tracking up, he is tracking up pretty nicely. Come on. Come on. Come on, Top. Come on. Okay, I'm not sure that we're going to get a canter, but aside from the little bit of tightness through his haunch, through his back and his high head, I'm not seeing any obvious signs of distress or lameness. No gait irregularities, just, generally not very fit. And he's very concerned about heading back to his buddies in the barn. All right, hi, bud. Back up. Good boy. Good boy. Okay, so initially, just the vibe that I got is he's very concerned about what I was asking. He wasn't really interested in wanting to move out, and I think a lot of the tightness was from that, mentally and emotionally. Though yes, I do realize that a lot of it is also physical, and I did uh, note that there was a lot of physical tightness, especially through his back. But knowing him personally, I think a good amount of that is just simply because he wasn't really sure what I was asking. His buddies are in the barn, and um, he's a naturally very tight horse, from a mental and emotional perspective, and it manifests itself physically. So what I'm hoping is that with CST, we can address some of that and provide him with a little bit of relief and a little bit of space to just relax and, find comfort in the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the physical aspect of palpating, the hands-on part of it, and then we'll go into the actual session. So one thing I will note is that Top has sort of almost always had a lot of development in the muscles through here, at the top of his head, covering the parietal bone. And in years past, it used to be very, very overdeveloped. But recently, they've become a lot less noticeable. Although what I'm seeing is that the left side is more developed than the right. But I'm not feeling any differences in the bones specifically. There is a difference here. The left lacrimal seems or feels a bit further out. Sinus and lacrimal, zygomatic. No abnormal reaction to the palpation, though. No notable reaction to TMJ or to masseter muscle, and nothing with molars. He has a little bit of crusties here on his eyes, but nothing specific. His eyes are a little puffy, and that's kind of normal for him. He does deal with some allergies, but mucous membranes are not reddened or swollen, no puffiness there. No real issues with the ears or with the poll. Nothing specific to note, although there is quite a bit of tension here, over the splenius. I'll look at his teeth, see if I can see any hooks, anything abnormal. He's got a slight hook, but he is also due to have his teeth floated in a month or so. I'm looking at his jaw. So what I am noticing is that he does have a very, very slight underbite. Very slight underbite. And his teeth do not appear to meet. I don't know if that's because of the way he's holding his tongue or what that is. We'll see if he moves his tongue, if his jaw will come here. Okay, so once he moved his tongue, the underbite is gone, so I think it's just the way he was holding his mouth. And his teeth do come and meet. I will note that he has plaque nodules on his tusks, and that's something that we deal with him pretty frequently. I'm not quite sure why, it's just something that always develops on him. I go down his neck. So his brachiocephalic is quite developed, although the serratus is not quite as developed, but he does not have, there's no negative crest. He actually does have quite a rounded neck, but just here the serratus is a little bit underdeveloped. No abnormal reaction on the chest or forearm. Nothing on the shoulder. No abnormal response at the girth or through the ribs. No response at left longissimus or at the back edge of the shoulder. Muscle tone feels fairly normal. Noting that the medial is underdeveloped, there's atrophy. No reaction to stifle palpation. Semitendinosus feels a little overdeveloped, but there's no tension. Can you step over? Boy, step over. There's a whole lot of creaking though. Lots and lots and lots of creaking. There's one thing that I've noticed with him over the years is unfortunately he does have somewhat unfortunate conformation. He is splay-toed in the front and in the hind. He has extremely long toe conformation and very narrow heel conformation. And he's very base narrow. So very similar on this side of the neck as with the left side of the neck. Brachiocephalic is a little more developed than the serratus and splenius, but no pain response. Very nicely developed chest, nicely developed shoulder. No response to palpation through longissimus. Nothing through lumbar, nothing through sacrum. No response to palpation of right stifle joint. The same as with left, semitendinosus feels overdeveloped, but no abnormal tension. go ahead and work on his legs. See if I can get him positioned so that the camera can pick it up. Okay. See, he has squared himself up, but unfortunately he's standing very base narrow, so his front legs, he's standing very over at the knee, and then the hind legs are very much underneath of him. He just righted himself. Before I look at his legs here, if he will stand for me. I'm not sure that he'll allow me to walk to his side far enough away to see his back, but I can see it in the camera. He does have a slight dip right behind the wither, and then it rises up to his sacrum. However, when he's in motion, that usually pulls up and he has a really nice back, but he is built downhill. Good boy. I'm gonna ask for the leg. So there's no hesitation in picking it up. And he has full range of motion. I can get that heel to his elbow. See about the knee. No resistance at the knee. And the fetlock. No resistance with fetlock, but there is a slight amount of edema just above the joint. A little bit of resistance in flexion at the fetlock. And quite a bit of resistance to extending that leg. He's having a hard time balancing. I'm going to ask for this leg, for the right leg, and he picked it up for me, so that was nice. The full range of motion there at the knee. No creeping. Little bit of resistance at the fetlock, but not bad. And no resistance, although now he's having a hard time balancing. But no resistance in that right foreleg. About picking up his legs for me, which is nice. We'll see if he'll extend it for me. She's not very resistant to extending that hind leg. He doesn't want to extend it. He can compress it, but it feels as though he's not very stable. And then extension forward, there's a lot of resistance. He's almost trying to balance on me. Ready with that leg, good boy. We'll see if he'll extend this one. He's more willing to extend the right hind, but it's still very hard for him. He feels very unstable. Compression of the hock and the stifle. Got compression, but it's very difficult for him to stand like that. And extension forward on this side is very easy, but I can see him shaking on the left hind. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do for evaluation is ask him for some flexion to see what he's capable of as far as being able to stretch his neck. Ooh, there's a lot of popping in his neck and through his shoulder here. He's pretty unwilling to go too far beyond his shoulder, beyond his girth. I'm gonna ask that he lift his tummy. Very little lift from his tummy. Quite a bit of resistance in stretching this direction, but he can't reach further. Good boy. Okay, now we're going to get into the CST session. I'm hoping the flies won't bother him quite so much. I did fly spray him, but he's also due to be taped later, and I didn't want to spray over his body, so hopefully I can still, we'll still be able to see some, releases. So I think in general what I'm going to do for his adjustments, I'm definitely going to do his back and probably mouth release, nose release, and then he's always been very concerned about his ears being handled, so I'm going to do that. And then we'll do a little bit of temporal, parietal, and we'll get this lacrimal and sinus here. Good boy. Good boy. You're so short. Good boy. Shoulder.
just picked up this leg and moved it forward. Now he's moving it back. Doing a lot of lip quivering. I can see it, he's processing it. I think I'm gonna let him have that space. See what he thinks about it. Good boy. We'll get the thoracic. Thoracic back here at the girth. Okay. Interesting, he keeps wanting to check in on me. Step back and let him process that. Boy. Come back here to lumbar. There's a lot of tummy gurgles, lots of tummy sounds. I'm going to put him sideways here, just so you guys can see a little better. Good boy, come on. Good boy. We'll do the sacral. Kind of righting himself, standing more square underneath of himself. Much more square. Doing a lot of looking around. Let him process. See what he thinks. Breathing a little bit heavy at the moment. But he's standing much more underneath of himself. He's going to go back in. Lots of tummy sounds. I can feel the rumbles under my right hand. All right, I think I'm gonna let that be. Go to another side. Let me step over here. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Get this shoulder. It's interesting. He went from standing really base narrow to very, very, very square, and just nice posture. Really nice, solid posture. He keeps wanting to square himself up. Boy, all right. Thoracic. I mean, he is bothered by the bugs, and it's really unfortunate, but oh boy. There we go. Come back here to the lumbar again. Lots of tummy sounds. Belly rumbles. Is not standing quite as base narrow in the hind anymore. He's actually kind of widened his stance a bit. I'm going to let him process that again. Go back in. He's widened his stance out quite a bit, so I'm going to leave that. Come back here to the sacrum. Once again, lots and lots of tummy sounds. I can feel the rumbles in my hands. Okay, I feel like we're gonna have to revisit that on another session.
I know that he deals with a lot of discomfort and tension back here, so I'm not sure. They just passed a little bit of gas. Not sure how much release he's going to get from that today. I'm going to turn him around so that we can get the tail release. Come here. Hang on. Oh, we're feeling real good, aren't we? We're feeling real good. Boy. Like right here. He's not usually a big fan of his tail being handled. Very apprehensive and sensitive. He is getting quite loose though. Quite loose. Kind of rotating his hips and rotating his tail at the same time. Starting to rest that hind leg there. Resting that hind leg. Okay, I'm gonna let that be. We'll revisit it another time. Get into the legs. Ask for this front leg here. He just dropped his whole shoulder. Boy. He's holding quite a bit of tension here on the left front. Seems to overlap that. There we go, now you dropped it. Ooh, that got really damaged. Boy. He actually, it's not quite, it's unfortunate you can't see it on the camera, but he's actually, I let it down and he is yet forget to put his foot back. I'm going to let him be on that. See if I can get it. Oh, nope, you fixed it. Good boy. Would you step up here? Step up. Step up. Good boy. If I can get him to stop. Good boy. Quite heavy. He wants to do the same thing with his hind leg. Just let that drop. I'll see if I can get it without him wanting to move. See if I can show you what he's doing. Good boy, Top. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and do a back release. He's wanting to rest those hind legs. Not here and do ears. Boy. You're just short enough I can do it this way. I'll let him process. Nice, sweetheart. Good boy. Because he used to have a wave mouth, and it's been managed pretty well through floating his teeth, but he does still have a tendency to have, good boy, he does still have a tendency to have, some tightness through his head and some dental issues, so I'm going to do a TMJ on him. Pretty sure that was at flies.
started pursing his mouth and he's breathing quite a bit heavier than he was. I'm going to take that as a sign that there's a lot of tension here that he's holding on to. I actually feel the joint moving under my hands. Give him a break from that. I'm going to move here to the parietal bone. See what that can do for him. It might lend him to open up a little bit more about his TMJ. Right. Do the sinus here. Like I said before, he does deal with, he does have a tendency to deal with a lot of congestion and seasonal allergies. Why don't you step back up? Yeah. Come on back. Okay. Might be a little easier for me from this side. He's only 14'1", so he's a little short. And being a stock horse, he really enjoys carrying his head very low. The tension in his mouth went away. A little bit of a reaction there. See if we can get this lacrimal and zygomatic to want to become a little bit less puffed out. What do you think? What do you think? He's a really sweet horse, but he's not usually the most affectionate, you know, or in your pocket type of horse. He's usually very quiet and keeps to himself. So the fact that he wants to check in with me and touch me a lot is really interesting. I'm gonna go back to the TMJ. It's interesting, I can feel the joint moving a lot under my hands, especially on the right side. Okay, I'm going to finish up with the nasal or nose release and then mouth release. We'll do mouth release first. Which I don't anticipate him to like very much because, like I said, he experienced a lot of very, very harsh treatment, very rough treatment. One of the many reasons why I don't ride him. And we're going nose, just the nose hold. Which again, I don't anticipate him to enjoy very much because I have a feeling he probably was chain twitched. Boy. Okay. So that will conclude his session for today. And like I said earlier before, I am his owner. We've known each other for what? Almost 12 years now? 11 years? Roughly 11 years. In that time, I had tried to ride him, and every time I did, he told me no, and so I listened. And I have not ridden him, though we've done a lot of liberty, and found out that he very much enjoyed jumping when he was younger. He was actually really good at it. And for a horse that's usually very fearful and very skittish and, you know, not really wanting to participate in human things, when he realized that I was excited about him jumping, he would jump almost anything. And we actually tested that, and at one point he was jumping 3'6" vertically and almost 6 foot horizontally, fences and spans. So he really quite enjoyed it. It's unfortunate that he had such a rough life and a rough upbringing, because he would have made a really fun little hunter pony. I'm thoroughly impressed. The atrophied areas in his glutes that he usually has, they felt very hollow, very sunken in the palpation, and at the moment he actually feels like he has pretty decent muscle tone. And I noticed that, especially the more that I was working on his hind end, and especially once we went into the hind leg unwinding, he changed his really narrow stance. He has a tendency to stand very, very, very narrow and very tight behind, and usually with his hind legs and his hocks well underneath of him, so he almost looks like he's standing on a pedestal, but he's not, obviously. But he went from that very awkward stance to just this beautiful, beautiful posture, you know, where he was nice and squared, you know, squared straight up and down underneath of himself, and he actually widened his stance behind, which is interesting because I don't usually see him do that. So that was really nice, really nice to see. I have a feeling in the future we're going to really focus on that hind end, really focus on releasing tension there. He's still releasing. And like I said earlier on, he's not a very expressive horse. He's very, very stoic. Usually he doesn't really want to show you what he's thinking or what he's feeling. He has a tendency to really hold a lot of tension in his face. He almost looks like a little old man because he kind of purses his lips and squints his eyes. And he's really wanting to be close to me, which is also unusual. He doesn't usually want to be, like I said, he's not usually a really affectionate horse. Not bad. And he's not usually very communicative about what he likes and what he doesn't like. He has a tendency to kind of zone out and ignore anything and everything around him, and he internalizes a lot, which used to be very dangerous. He would internalize, and he would look like he was quiet and, you know, enjoying what was going on, or at the very least tolerating it, and then the next thing you knew, he would just blow up and become really violent. So
I think this modality is going to work really well for him. Will be very helpful in opening him up mentally and emotionally as well as physically, and helping him with that physical tension that he carries that's manifesting. So yeah, I'm very excited to continue working on him and using this for him. And thank you for watching.